Hello, it's John Heaton, and I've had a request to review this album by Pink Floyd, The Wall, and it was in my top 20 favourite albums of all time, and it's one of the few that I haven't got around to doing a review of, so here goes. I approached this with some trepidation because it's such a monumental work and so much has been said about it, but I'll give you my tuppence worth and tell you how I got into it and some of the history behind it and some personal observations as well. So this came out in November 79, and by this stage double albums were nothing new from major rock artists. I mean, most people had already released a double, like Led Zeppelin, The Who, The Stones, Beatles, The Yellow, Fleetwood Mac, Genesis. So by the time this album came out, they were about the last band to put out a double of the major ones anyway. So it was a brave thing to do, and double albums are always brave in my opinion, and maybe not as commercial or as concise as a single album. But for me, this is Pink Floyd's peak in terms of achievement. One can argue that some of the other albums may have been musically more cohesive, and maybe the band collaboration was greater on some of the others, like Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here. But as an artistic statement, all things considered, I think The Wall is their best album, and one must say that this is getting to the stage where Pink Floyd was dominated by Roger Waters. Certainly wrote all the lyrics as he'd always had done, but he was beginning to take artistic control over the band's direction. This whole concept was his, and whilst he got a couple of people to come in and help him with the concept, it was very much his concept, and the other bandmates didn't really have much input into the storyline and the way the album flowed. But having said that, one is eternally grateful that this was not a Roger Waters solo album, because it could easily have been. As it is, it's Pink Floyd's last grand statement. They were to do an album after this before Roger Waters left the band, but this album is immeasurably improved by the fact that Dave Gilmour is on guitar throughout, just contributing one after another of superb guitar solos and guitar passages. And I'm glad that Nick Mason's on drums and Rick Wright is on keyboards, although Rick Wright did get asked to leave the band shortly after this album was recorded. So that's a bit of background. So when it came out, I mean, I didn't know much about Pink Floyd, and then a local girl in Wimbledon where I lived introduced me to this album, and I'm very grateful. And then I kind of got into Pink Floyd retrospectively. It's got wonderful animation from Gerald Scarfe, who later went on to do the animation for the film, who is now married to Jane Asher, by the way. And Gerald Scarfe also wrote the lyrics on the album sleeve. Not particularly easy to read, but a nice touch, really. And then on the album itself, we have more Gerald Scarfe animations. So he was the one who came up with the grotesque teacher. If you've seen the film, putting the kids through the sausage machine. And actually, before the film even came out, the single Another Brick in the Wall had a great video which went with it, which was animation from Gerald Scarfe. You remember those hammers with the marching hammers? Superb. And that single reached number one around about Christmas 1979. So we'll come to that. So let's go through the tracks. Well, first of all, this album was a pretty monster hit, number one in the US, number 3 in the UK from what I've read, although I was surprised by that. Over the years it sold about 30 million copies, which makes it one of the best-selling albums of all time. I think Dark Side of the Moon from them has sold more. But it's up there, and it's certainly. And by the way, my son's just picked up the new 180 gram vinyl, so you can compare the walls from 37 years of wear and tear. He's yet to open that. So, this album was inspired by Roger Waters' Animals Tour of '77, Pink Floyd's Animals Tour. It was actually called In the Flesh, that tour, which was turned out to be the opening track of this album. And Roger got so annoyed at doing stadium gigs, he actually spat at one of the people in the front row who was shouting and screaming. And then he imagined, the next step from that was to imagine a wall between him and the audience, because he really couldn't stand these stadium gigs. And then he fleshed out the idea, and he went to the band with two concepts, which was one which was the wall concept, and then one which was what was later to become his first solo album, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. And then the band chose the wall concept. He went away, worked on it, and then to produce the album, he brought in Bob Ezrin, James Guthrie to collaborate. Although Roger was definitely the boss in all these proceedings, as he made clear during the sessions. So the album then opens with In the Flesh, and it's a great rocker, and it's a great opening to the film. When this film came out in 1982, Bob Geldof took the lead part and did a superb performance. Roger sings this very well. Dave Gilmour's on great form guitar, and it's a great opening to the album. And then The Thin Ice is next, and Dave Gilmour's singing on this. By the way, I mean, when one first gets into Pink Floyd, one is trying to work out who sings what. I think after a while it becomes quite obvious. Dave Gilmour's voice is quite recognisable, and he sings on a lot of this album. So not only does he contribute to 4 of the songs, he actually sings on, I'd say, a good half of this album to great effect. And The Thin Ice is one of the first tracks where he sings on. And then another great guitar solo in that song. Roger also sings on this song. And then we move into Another Brick in the Wall Part 1, which is the great build-up with The Happiest Days of Our Lives. When I grew up and went to school, there were certain teachers. So Rogers allegedly hated his school career, although I don't suppose it was as bad as he makes out, but I also went to boarding school. But he certainly has got it in for his teachers on this album, and it upset a few people. I think Dave Gilmour was on record saying Roger Waters is slagging off a whole lot of people on this album who never did anything wrong to him. So they probably weren't all in agreement with the sentiment behind the album, but the rest of the band certainly played their respective instruments brilliantly, and I think probably accepted this was a great concept and would become a timeless concept, because one of the good things about The Wall is it's not just about Roger Waters, it's basically includes universal themes such as having an overbearing mother, or losing someone, a loved one in a war, or being victimized at school, or trying to be a rock star with all the temptations that entails. There's loads of themes which basically are universal, and that's why this album, I think, has gone down so well and lasted so well over the years. So Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 comes next, the single, and Pink Floyd never normally have hit singles, but this was released and shot to #1 with that great video, as I said, and apparently the original version just had the 2 verses identical, and Roger said, okay, we need something different, so he sent it off to a school in Islington in London, and the musical director of that school was very pleased to have the challenge of involving the kids in this, and he did a brilliant job, asked them to sing in a Cockney accent, and the result apparently really pleased Roger Waters, and probably persuaded him to release it as a single. So I don't think they've had a hit single since, but that was definitely #1, Christmas '79. And then to close side one, we have maybe the best track on the album, Mother, which is written about, as I said, maybe an overbearing mother. Mother's going to check out all your girlfriends for you. Mother won't let anyone dirty get through, that kind of thing. And then Dave Gilmour sings the marvellous bridge in the middle. In fact, that bit, Mother's going to check out all your girlfriends for you, that is sung by Dave, and then Roger's singing Mother, do you think they'll drop the bomb? You know, the verses. So a very good combination of the two vocalists on this, and a guitar solo to die for from Dave Gilmour. He really puts his stamp on this album, and he may not have liked it, or may not have liked the situation in which it was recorded and stuff, but I'm sure he's happy that he laid down this superb guitar work on this album, because it really lifts it. And then side two opens with Goodbye Blue Sky, very evocative song, harking back to growing up in World War II. Roger Waters lost his father in 1944, and marvellously animated in the film, by the way. And then we've got Empty Spaces, a short number leading into Young Lust. On this song, Young Lust, superb rocker with a lead vocal from Dave Gilmour, and he co-wrote this song, probably wrote most of it actually, and it's absolutely brilliant. And again, in the film, a great scene. Then we got One of My Turns, which is another one about rock stars and their temptations. And basically, Roger is the lead character. Pink, as he's called on this album, is just going berserk and throwing TVs around the room and out the window. And he's fed up with his girlfriend, and it's quite a violent song. And then followed by this pleading, Don't Leave Me Now, which is a softer number, but has some pretty disturbing lyrics in it as well, such as to beat to a pulp on a Saturday night, oh babe. You know, some of those words are pretty nasty. So he's going through, this lead character, Pink, is going through a lot of pain at the time, and then Another Brick in the Wall Part 3 is a reprise of that song, a bit more aggressively done, and then a heartbreaking end to side 2, Goodbye Cruel World. There's nothing you can do to make me change my mind. Goodbye. And that could have been the end, but it's not. It's only the end of part 1, and then we come back with side 3, and they change the running order of these songs late in the day. So if you look at the lyrics of this album, it starts off with Is Anybody Out There on side 3, but they quite rightly chose Hey You to open the side, because it's a much more effective opener. And it's just a brilliant song, sung by Dave Gilmour in the first verse. And then Roger comes in to sing the But It Was Only Fantasy bit, and then Roger sings the last verse in the higher register. And it's just a brilliantly done number. Like Mother, a superb combination of the talents of Waters and Gilmour, and just great guitar work from Gilmour as well, and just an all-round ensemble of performance from the band. Is Anybody Out There is a kind of spooky linking number, and then Nobody Home. Just some absolutely brilliant words on this. It's a song about, again, the rock star at a loose end, doesn't know what to do with himself. He's got all this money, he's got all these drugs, and it's still not enough. I've got the obligatory Hendrix perm and the inevitable pinhole burns all down the front of my favourite satin shirt. I've got nicotine stains on my fingers. I've got a silver spoon on a chain. I've got a grand piano to prop up my mortal remains. I've got wild, staring eyes, and I've got a strong urge to fly, but I've got nowhere to fly to. It's an absolutely brilliant song, one of Roger Waters' best ever compositions, and superbly supported by the band again, with another great guitar solo from Gilmour. And then we've got a couple of maybe what we'd call minor songs. Vera, which is a song about Vera Lynn, who used to sing for the troops in World War II. It's not bad, nothing great. Bring the Boys Back Home is again a song about, you know, bring the boys back home from the war kind of thing, and nothing much as a song, but fits very well into the concept here. And as if one classic ballad was not enough on side 3, we've got a second one, Comfortably Numb, which is probably even better. And this song is co-written by Dave Gilmour and Roger Waters, and Roger's singing the opening verses. Hello, is there anybody in there? Just nod if you can hear me. And then Gilmour's singing the superb There Is No Pain, You Are Receding. Song about, bringing him back to into a state of consciousness, because he's basically almost fallen into a coma by this stage, and so they want to get him up there onto the stage to perform, his obligations as a rock star. So they pump all these drugs into him, and then we have side 4, which starts off with Gilmour's softly sung The Show Must Go On, and then we've got the pretty disturbing In the Flesh reprisal, where Pink is basically, he's been resurrected, and he's up there on stage acting like a fascist, and some pretty disturbing lyrics in this, which continue into the next 2 tracks, Run Like Hell, Waiting for the Worms. So he's basically a fascist in his head anyway, and he's got all these stormtroopers with him, and again, a very, very good scene in the film. If you've not seen it, check it out. Disturbing though. And then we've got the track stop, I Want to Go Home, and then he decides to put himself on trial, and I think Bob Ezrin co-wrote this track with Roger Waters, the trial, where he's got, all the characters are called to witness, such as the mother and the school teacher, father. It's very, melodically speaking, it's not much, but it works tremendously in the context of this album. And then the album finishes with Outside the Wall, which is a really soft number where the wall has come down, it's been teared down, and he's once again exposed to the world. So we're back kind of full circle to the beginning. So I hope that wasn't too long. It's just a brilliant album, and you've got to be in the mood to listen to it, because it is quite a disturbing listen, but I think it's not only Pink Floyd's greatest album, I think it's Roger Waters' greatest artistic statement, lyrically anyway. And then the film, which not everyone enjoys. I remember taking my parents to it, and my dad famously said I quite enjoyed not enjoying it. And then we've got, obviously the CD came out in its original form, and then this later came out, the Experience Edition, with loads of demos, which are kind of interesting, but I don't listen to them very often, because this album is just brilliant as it is. One doesn't need demos and outtakes. It's just a marvellous double album from start to finish, and flows really well. And you can't really listen to the tracks in isolation. Well, you can with a couple of them, of course, but it's rewarded most when one just sits through the whole lot, preferably plays it loud without too much distraction. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.